What's happening, guys? Supernova here, back with another video, and this is going to be my no bullshit review of Ghost of Yotei. And the funny thing is, I actually already made this video, but for whatever reason, somehow about half of it got corrupted and just wasn't there. And honestly, it was probably for the best, because there were some things I didn't touch on in that video that I probably should have, because I immediately started getting asked questions on top of, hey, what happened to the rest of your video? Things like, is it woke? Is it pushing political agendas? Shit like that. So before I even get into my review, before I start saying anything about the game, let me address that, because that seems to be the thing that people are most concerned with, especially because the actress who lent both her voice and likeness to the character of Atsu, Erika Ishii, is an LGBT activist, a gay woman who evidently thinks it's cool to be Antifa. So because of that, people were worried about, oh no, is this going to have some woke shit in it? Is there going to be some agenda pushing, some propaganda, what have you? And I'm here to say, ultimately, it depends on you and what you think woke is, or what is woke to you. Because I know there are millions of people out there that simply having a female protagonist who can beat the shit out of men is woke to them. And they're going to be like, nope, I'm not playing it. A fucking 110-pound girl throwing dudes around. Bullshit, woke, trash. Fair enough. I personally don't fall in that camp, but if you do, then yes, this game is going to be very, very woke to you. To me, I don't really define that as woke. I look at movies like Kill Bill, where Uma Thurman is killing hundreds of dudes all at once, and I don't find anything woke with that. Now, for things that I would absolutely define as woke, for example, pushing certain messaging or ideologies, I personally, in my 52 hours that I played in order to platinum the game, didn't experience anything like that. Although you may have heard things online, because even I've heard them and seen them, people saying things like, oh, another angry lesbian game. Atsu in this game is actually not a lesbian. It's never hinted at that she's a lesbian. They never flirt with the idea of her preferring women over men. Her sexuality is actually never brought up at all. This is strictly a revenge story, and her sexuality just never comes up, as it shouldn't. So no, Atsu is not a lesbian in this game. This game does not push any LGBTQ messaging, at least that I'm aware of. Again, I platinumed the game, as it shouldn't, because it's 1600s Japan, right? Like, if that showed up in this game, it would make absolutely zero fucking sense. And to the best of my knowledge, it never does. Keep in mind, I've played every mission in the game. And unlike many female protagonists or female characters made for modern audiences, Atsu actually isn't a man-hater who goes around lecturing men about how terrible they are, or evil, or any of that shit. She hates men in the game, but only the ones that killed her family, and that makes sense. Atsu also isn't built like a man. She's not built like Abby in The Last of Us Part 2. She's not this fucking muscle-bound, roided-out fucking creature. She actually looks like a woman. Hell, we even get some Atsu cake when she's entering the hot spring, something that a lot of people didn't think they were going to do. Basically, they didn't uglify the character or make her look more manly, which is something that they seem to love to do in modern games, and something that I would absolutely qualify as being woke. So to circle back to the question at the beginning of the video, is this game woke? Me personally, I don't feel it is, at least when it comes to the things that I would define as woke, things like the pushing of LGBTQ ideology, or the lecturing of men, or really the pushing of any type of messaging, especially ones that wouldn't make sense in 1600 Japan. And for me, I didn't see any of that in this game. Now, I am, again, well aware of the things that the voice actress Erika Ishii has said. I'm also well aware of the things that some of the Sucker Punch developers had said after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. So I both dislike Erika Ishii and hate those individual developers. And I can understand if there are people out there that also feel that way and are like, because of those reasons, I will not support this game. If that's you, you're entitled to feel that way. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. I'm just going to tell you that for me, that's what, 5-6 people out of 150 or 160 or however many Sucker Punch employees there are that worked on this game. And I personally don't feel that this game or those other developers should be punished because of some dumb shit a handful of people said. But again, if you feel that you don't want to support the game because of that, you're absolutely entitled to do so. I'm not here to talk you out of it. I'm just here to say that I don't feel that way, but it's totally fine if you do. Now, with all of that shit out of the way, let me get into take 2 of this review since I'm now recording it for a second time. So, what is Ghost of Yotei? Ghost of Yotei is actually the follow-up to the critically and commercially acclaimed Ghost of Tsushima that released on PS4. And although it is not a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, it is still in universe, but takes place roughly 300 years after Ghost of Tsushima, where that took place in 1300s Japan. This takes place in 1600s Japan. And it follows Atsu, a woman who's on a revenge mission to kill the members of the Yotei Six, a gang who brutally murders her family. Now, before I get into the rest of the review, I want to let you know that I believe that Ghost of Tsushima is a masterpiece of a game. It is one of the best games of the PlayStation 4 generation. It is one of the best PlayStation games out of any of the PlayStation generations. It's honestly one of the best games ever made, full stop. I think Ghost of Tsushima is a very, very special game, and it is one of my absolute favorite games I've ever played. And I've been playing video games for damn near 40 years. I've played a lot of video games over my life. And I find Ghost of Tsushima to be an exceptional example of this medium that I love called video games. So when it comes to Ghost of Yotei, how do I feel? Well, I'm not going to bury the lead here. I think Ghost of Yotei is a very, very good game. I don't think it quite hits some of the peaks that Ghost of Tsushima did, but I do think it is a wonderful game. I had a fantastic time over my 52 hours. I never got bored with it. I never got tired of it. And I overall enjoyed the entire experience. I also think that in almost every way, Ghost of Yotei does things much better than in Ghost of Tsushima, as one would hope for in a sequel. Like I said, in almost all the ways. And that's the reason why I don't quite feel that it hits the same peaks as Ghost of Tsushima. Now, because I feel that it does more things better than it does worse, let me start off with the main thing that I really think that it does worse. And when I say worse, I don't mean that it's bad. I just mean that it's not as good as in Tsushima. And that is with the story. And that's because Ghost of Yotei is just your average revenge story. It's done well, it's done to a high level, the voice acting is great, but it's still just very much a revenge tale. Again, nothing wrong with that. Revenge tales work. That's why we've had them in literature, film, TV, and in video games for thousands of years now. But when compared to Ghost of Tsushima, it's just nowhere near to the level of the story in that game. Specifically because the things that the characters have to deal with are very, very different. For example, in Ghost of Yotei, Atsu never has to wrestle with her convictions of, am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? She doesn't care. Her whole mission is, they murdered my family, they're now going to die. I'm going to kill them. It's going to be at my hand, by my blade. Don't care how I do it. Don't care what I have to do to get there. Don't care who I have to go through to make it happen. I'm going to kill the people that killed my family. And that's it, which is fine. But in Ghost of Tsushima, Jin Sakai was raised his entire life as a noble samurai. He was raised with honor. Samurai have a code. You fight your enemy head on. You stand in front of them, they stand in front of you, and that's the way things are done. Unfortunately for Jin Sakai, though, he's dealing with a Mongol invasion of his home, which is the island of Tsushima. And he quickly comes to the realization that in order to take back his land and save his people, he might have to do some things that are not up to his samurai code, that are dishonorable, because the Mongols themselves, they're savages. They have no honor. They have no nobility. They're there to rape, pillage, and just take as much as they can. They don't care. So Jin really has to wrestle with, do I do things that are against my code in order to save my people? Things like killing from the shadows, assassinating people, being sneaky, because that's not the samurai way. And through the entire game, he has to struggle with, am I losing myself? Is it worth it to save my people if at the end of the day I've lost myself, if I've done things in my past now that I can't live with or that I won't be able to forgive myself for? And he's constantly told by other people like, Jin, what are you doing? This is not how we do things. This is not the way of the samurai. I understand that you think that these are the things you need to do, but you can't do it this way. This is not the way that we do things. Atsu doesn't have to deal with that. Nobody really tells her, yo, what are you doing, Atsu? Listen, is it worth it to go through all this shit, to murder all these people just to enact your revenge? Is it worth it? Now, do those conversations come up? Yes. It's not like the conversations don't come up. A couple times people will tell her, like, this isn't you, or like, you really shouldn't be doing this. But again, Atsu doesn't care. She's like, yeah, whatever, shut the fuck up, dude. I'm here to kill these people. I understand you don't think I should be doing these things, but I don't care. I swore to my dead family that I was going to avenge them and then join them in death. They are very, very different stories, and the characters deal with the things in those stories very, very differently. Again, not saying that the story in Yotei is bad. The story in Yotei is fine. There's actually a couple twists in there I wasn't expecting, where I was like, oh shit, did not see that coming. There are also a couple moments in the game where I had some tugs at my emotional heartstrings, something that Tsushima also did really, really well. So there isn't a problem with the story in Ghost of Yotei. It's not a bad story. It's not told bad. It's just not as good or as compelling as the one in Ghost of Tsushima. Also, at the end of Ghost of Yotei, for the most part, Atsu's story comes to a complete end. It's tied up with a nice little bow, and she essentially gets to live out the rest of her life in happiness. Is it a completely happy ending? No. But Atsu is allowed to now live the rest of her life as she sees fit, having now accomplished the things she set out to do. In comparison, Jin Sakai in Ghost of Tsushima does not really get that luxury. He does not get a happy ending. As a matter of fact, the end of the story gives you a choice of what you're going to do at the end. You can either choose option A or option B, but neither option ends in a happy ending for Jin Sakai, because no matter which you choose, Jin has to now deal with the consequences of his actions over the course of the game. They're going to affect him for the rest of his life, and he's going to have to live with them. In Ghost of Yotei, not so much. But this is really the only element of the game that I really feel that Ghost of Yotei didn't do as well as Ghost of Tsushima. Now let's get into all the ways that I think Ghost of Yotei does it better. The first one being the one that's probably most obvious. Ghost of Yotei is a beautiful game. It is one of the most stunningly beautiful open worlds you can experience in gaming, period. And is much more beautiful than Ghost of Tsushima, as it should be. Ghost of Tsushima was a PS4 game. This is a PS5 game. It's expected that it should look better, and it does. I heard someone say that you could, at any point in time, take a screenshot and it could be a wallpaper on your desktop. And I think that holds true. This game, everywhere you look, is beautiful. There are beautiful vistas and beautiful sunsets and aurora borealis looking shit in the sky at night. Tons of grass and trees blowing in the wind, particle effects like leaves and flowers and lightning bugs or fireflies, depending on what part of the country you're from. It's just a very, very beautiful game. And it's not just graphical beauty, because anybody can make a game that has great graphical fidelity. It's not just graphical fidelity that this game excels in. It really is the artistry, because someone had to sit down and design these environments and figure out where we're going to put the hills, where we're going to put the mountains, where we're going to put the trees, and do it in a way that creates a beautiful landscape for you to look at. Because you can just put shit wherever with high graphical fidelity. It doesn't mean that the world's going to look beautiful. So you can't just say, oh, it's a great looking game due specifically to the graphical fidelity. That's part of it, but I think a big part of it also has to do with the artistry. So I think you really do have to give a round of applause to all of the developers who worked on crafting this wonderfully realized, beautiful. Again, you're going to hear beautiful a lot. No matter what review of this game you watch, you're going to hear beautiful, gorgeous. You're going to hear these words a lot. And that's because it just is. It is a beautifully realized open world at every turn, no matter where you are. So props to developers when it comes to that. The world also feels much more alive than it did in Ghost of Tsushima, just because there's a lot more wildlife in it. Lots of times as you're riding your horse through fields, you'll see whole flocks of birds take off and fly away. Families of deer, herds of other horses just galloping through fields. Fish jumping out of the water. Frogs that are jumping on rocks near lakes and ponds. Crabs walking on the beach. Again, the fireflies or lightning bugs, butterflies. There's just a lot more life in this world than there was in Ghost of Tsushima that really helps this world feel much more alive than in the last game. I also want to give this game major props for being one of the best optimized games I have ever played, because not only is it a graphical showcase, because again, as I've been saying, it is a graphical showcase. It also runs amazingly well. I was playing on the PS5 Pro, which means I had the ability to play in performance. Not just performance, but also performance with ray tracing, which means it targeted 60 and had bounce light global illumination. And even with the ray tracing turned on and targeting 60, this game didn't stutter at all. Not even once. Now, was it a lock 60? I don't know. I'm not fucking Digital Foundry. But if that frame rate was dropping below 60 or fluctuating at all, it was to such a minimal amount that it was imperceivable to the eye. This game never stuttered, never hiccuped, nothing. It didn't matter how many enemies were on screen. It didn't matter how many fucking leaves or flowers or fireflies were on screen. It didn't matter how many particle effects. It didn't matter how many explosions. It didn't matter if I was in the middle of a large-scale battle. The game was rock solid and looked amazing the entire time while doing it. How many times are we able to say that about games in fucking 2025? Barely ever these days, it seems. We either get games that look beautiful and then run at 30 and aren't even a stable 30, or we get games that run at 60 and don't look fucking great at all. This game somehow looks amazing and runs amazing. Now, again, I played on the PS5 Pro. I don't know what the experience is over on the base PS5, but I have to imagine it's probably still pretty goddamn good. So again, props to them for delivering a game at launch that worked flawlessly. Not we fix it 6 months down the road or it got better a year later. No, day one, the second you boot the game up, it's going to work, and it's going to work perfectly. It's honestly sad that that's something that we have to praise, just because it should be the expectation, and it's just often not delivered, but here they do deliver. Another place this game really excels is in all the things that are not the main story. All the side missions, all the side activities, they are done so well. There are even side missions that they feel like they're part of the main mission, because you're constantly meeting up with characters who are asking you to do things that somehow tie in to the narrative or somehow tie into other characters you've met. It's none of the typical open world bullshit we see where it's like, oh yeah, you want this thing I have? Sure, I'll give it to you. But I need your help first. You see, I used to have apples. I had 15 apples. I don't know what happened to them. It seems that somehow I must have traveled to every corner of this map and just randomly dropped apples all over the fucking place. Am I retarded? I don't know. Maybe. But do me a favor. Go collect my apples, bring them back, and then I'll give you the thing that you want. You know, that fucking shit? None of the side quests or side missions in this game are like that. They're all impactful. They all feel like actual things that would happen in this realized world, they are done incredibly well. And I really think it is something that needs to be praised, because too often we see that other shit in open world games. And it is immersion breaking because it's so video gamey, right? It is so video gamey where it's like, this is fucking stupid. Who drops 15 apples all over the fucking world? Nothing like that happens in this game, thank God. And while the side quests in Ghost of Tsushima were no slouch either, they're definitely taken up to another notch in this game. They are done very, very well. There's also just a lot of things to do in the open world, whether it's fox dens or wolf dens or the shrines that you have to find. The world is densely packed for things to do, and you're always finding things everywhere that you go. I think I had played for like 8 hours when I booted up the game, and I had only done like one campaign story mission. I was just having too much fun going around doing all the other things. And like I said, it is dense with things to do. This game also brings back the very impressive environmental storytelling of Ghost of Tsushima, where it's not like a Ubisoft game where there's just shit cluttered all over the map of go here, go there, go there. This thing's over here, this thing's over there. Things don't show up on your map unless someone specifically tells you it's there, or unless you get close enough to find it on your own. Only then will it now appear on your map and be a fast travel spot. That's the other thing. Every place that you find, whether it's a shrine or a wolf den or fox den, once you've found it, it now appears on the map and becomes a fast travel point, making getting around the map a breeze. But it really is the environmental storytelling that's carried over from the first game that, again, really needs to be commended, because this game uses almost zero UI. As a matter of fact, when you're not in combat, there is no UI. When you want to find out how to get to someplace, if you mark it on your map, just like in the first game, you swipe up on the touchpad and the wind blows to show you the direction that you have to go. And then you head in that direction until you find the thing that you're looking for. Or maybe in the distance, you'll see some smoke coming out of a camp, and you know, oh, there's something over there. Or as you're riding your horse, you may hear a wolf howl, or you may hear a fox make a little noise, and you know, oh, there must be something over there. I heard a noise. Let me go investigate. Or again, like in the first game, as you're riding, a bird may fly over you. And certain birds, when you see them, you know that those birds will lead you to things like shrines or fox dens or other things in the open world. And all you have to do is follow the bird, right? Like, these are things that carry over from the first game that just really lend to helping you be immersed in this world, because the screen isn't cluttered with bullshit. Like I said, outside of combat, zero UI. But even when you are in combat, the UI is very, very minimal. It is just the small amount of information needed to know what you're doing. I wish more games would take this approach. Like, in some games, a UI makes sense. In the Cyberpunk, UI makes sense, right? You have machinery in your body. You basically have screens in your eyeballs or things connected in your brain. So having a user interface, it makes sense. In a RoboCop game, a user interface makes sense. In a game like this, it doesn't. We've just had them from the beginning of time, which is why we have them in all these games. But Ghost of Tsushima and some other games have shown that it is possible to play games without a UI and only have them appear when necessary, and only have the absolutely necessary information visible on screen. You don't have to clutter the screen with bullshit. I really appreciate that. It's a thing carried over from the first game, done again in this game. And like I said, it really lends to being able to be fully immersed in the open world. And since I mentioned it earlier, let's talk about fast travel for a second, because like I said, you can fast travel to every point on the map that you locate or that you find. And fast travel in this game, it is lightning fast, as it should be. This console has an SSD in it. You literally pick a spot you want to fast travel to, screen fades to black, unfades, and you are there. I think the only other game that is this fast when it comes to fast traveling that I've experienced is Spider-Man 2. There may be others out there, I just can't think of any, but it's really Spider-Man 2 and this game. Ghost of Tsushima also had really fast travel, but when you were fast traveling between the upper and lower sections of the map, it was a little bit longer to load. If you were fast traveling within the same section of the map, it was really fast. In this game, it doesn't matter what section of the map you are fast traveling to. It is damn near instantaneous every time. It is awesome. It makes getting around the map super easy, especially if you're someone that's trying to go after the platinum and you're doing the cleanup after the game. It made getting around to collect the things that I missed or do the things that I forgot to do an absolute fucking breeze. It's amazing. Now, another way that Ghost of Yotei changes something from Tsushima is in the combat system. And while at its core, it's ultimately the same, it is a little bit different, and I will say that I enjoy the combat system in this game a little bit more. A buddy of mine feels differently, and I think that's fair, right? Because they are so similar. If someone felt the combat system in the first game was better, I can understand that. Me personally, I feel the combat system in this game is a little bit better, and I'll explain why. In Ghost of Tsushima, the only weapon you have is your katana, and then you have like your bow and things like your kunai and throwable weapons, but your main weapon is your katana. And you have multiple stances for your katana. I think they were named after elements, like you had the stone stance, the water stance, I think a wind stance. I forgot what the fourth one was, but you had 4 stances, and each stance was effective towards a specific enemy. So when you got into combat encounters, you really had this rock, paper, scissors style of combat where, oh, they're using this weapon, I need to be in this stance. Oh, there's that enemy, I need to now switch to that stance. And switching stances was very, very easy. You pull a trigger, press one of the face buttons, bam, you're in another stance. So as you're fighting, you're constantly looking at enemies, surveying the battlefield, figuring out which enemies need to be dealt with first, and then switching to the stance that's going to be applicable to that enemy, and then switching to the stance that's going to be applicable to the next enemy. And it made for really, really engaging combat that in Ghost of Tsushima was top goddamn tier. And in this game, it's essentially the same thing. Again, not rock, paper, scissors style of combat. You're going to hear that also in a lot of reviews. You're going to hear 2 things, beautiful and rock, paper, scissors when describing the combat. But in the place of stances, you now have different weapons. Yes, you have your katana, but you also have the odachi, you have the kusarigami, you have dual katanas, and you have the yari. So instead of 4 stances of a katana, you now have 5 weapons. And all the weapons, even though combat is essentially the same, square for light attack, triangle for heavy attack, hold triangle, and then release for certain attacks, that doesn't really change among the weapons. But because they look so different, and because the animations for the combat is so different, and even the speeds at which you can swing the weapons is different. For example, the odachi, which is just a really large, oversized sword, that swings much, much slower than something like the kusarigami, which is really, really fast, close attacks. Because of that, the weapons do feel different for me, and I found that a little bit more enjoyable than the stances that were in Ghost of Tsushima. But again, if someone said they enjoyed that combat better, I don't really think it's a position you could argue with. It's just, do you like this one or do you like that one? But at the end of the day, both are fantastic. Both are fun. I love the combat in this game, just like I love the combat in the last game. Both games are some of the best swords and other weapon hack and slash combat that you can experience. It's really one of the things that makes these games so much fun is the combat, and it's done just as well in this game. For me, a little bit better, but it's really up to the person. There's also been a couple of quality of life improvements made in this game over the first one. For example, in this game, you can now create, I believe, up to 5 loadouts for your armor and your charms, because you do get multiple sets of armor in this game, and each set of armor has its own unique perks that get increased as you upgrade the armor. Not only that, as you upgrade each set of armor, they actually take on a new physical appearance. So level 1 looks a little bit different than level 2, which looks a little bit different than level 3, and vice versa. So even though I believe there are 13 armors in the game, it's actually more than that, because it's 13 times however many levels there are for each one of the armors. There's also different dyes you can find all throughout the game where you can completely change the colors of said armors. So you have a bunch of different armor sets that do different things. You also have up to 5 charm slots with charms that you find all throughout the game. You start off with 1 charm slot, but as you find more charms and more shrines, you unlock more, like I said, holding up to 5 charms. So you can do a complete build out of your character that has armor, that has certain perks, and then charms that have certain perks. And instead of having to swap those out every time you want to do something, you can have a loadout that is basically like, here's my armor that's all about parrying and deflecting and blocking, with all my charms that help also increase parrying abilities and things like that. And then you can have another one that's an armor that's all about stealth, and then 5 charms that help lend itself to that. So on the fly, you're able to switch between your multiple loadouts depending on what situation you're in. And you're able to switch them at any time, even in the middle of combat, and yes, even in the middle of a boss fight. So this is a really, really nice quality of life addition to this game. One thing that's notably missing, though, when it comes to the armor is a transmog system, because sometimes you like the perks on one armor, but maybe like the appearance of another. This game doesn't allow you to take perks of one armor with the appearance of another. That's something I hope that they add in future updates, but ultimately it's really not a game breaker as it is now, because all the armors are pretty cool to look at. But I'm sure a transmog system is going to be something that a lot of people are going to be asking for, and hopefully in the future something that we get. Another new feature in this game, which is kind of cool, is the camping ability. Anytime you're by your horse, you're able to set up a camp, and while at camp, you can cook mushrooms that you found or cook fish that you've collected, which give you perks for 24 hours within the game. And sometimes NPCs will randomly meet you at your camp with things to sell for you, or maybe information on something in the world that you can find. Not only that, they've kind of streamlined the system in terms of upgrading your gear, both your armor and your weapons, because when you look at your items in your menu, it'll show you if you have any upgrades available for it. Not only that, it'll show you what's required at each one of the levels along your path to upgrade that item, so you know exactly what's needed in order to get to the next level. And instead of having to open up the map and then search for the NPC in the open world and figure out where they are so you can go back to them to purchase your upgrade, you can literally from within that menu click set up camp, and then you will camp and that NPC will show up at your camp ready to upgrade your items. It's really, really streamlined and makes upgrading all your things much, much easier. Also, same thing with your charms. There are multiple of the charms that you find all throughout the open world that are actually upgradable charms. They aren't all upgradable, but several of them are. And they will upgrade even if they are not an equipped charm, which I thought was really, really cool, because a lot of games will only upgrade items you've equipped. In this game, even if you have a charm that is not currently equipped, if you've done the things in-game required to get it to its next level, it will still upgrade even if you don't have it equipped. I really appreciated that. Like I said earlier, Ghost of Yotei, it's not a fundamentally different game. It doesn't do anything groundbreaking or completely new, but it just takes the things that were in Ghost of Tsushima and it does them a little bit better, story aside. And ultimately, I enjoyed my experience with Ghost of Yotei. I think it's a fantastic game. I loved my time in it, but it was not perfect. No, I'm not here just to glaze the game. I did have an issue here or there, or things that I felt could be criticized. The first is I did experience 2 glitches. Just 2. A buddy of mine experienced one. It was a visual glitch. It appeared on screen for about 3 seconds and didn't do anything to really fuck with his game. I experienced 2. Again, that's 2 in an open world game while playing for 52 hours. One of them I forgot to capture, so I'll explain to you what happened. And then the other one I was able to capture, so I can just show you. The first one happened in the game's kind of gambling mini game, which this game has, like every open world game these days, it has its equivalent of like Gwent in The Witcher. But the way this game works is you sit at a round table and there are round cups randomly placed on that table, and then coins will randomly drop on that table. You then use the right trigger to flick coins at other coins, and I'm not going to go over all the rules of the game, but that's essentially how the game works. You flick coins into other coins, and that's how you play that game. But in one particular instance, when the coins fell onto the table, instead of landing on the table, they fell basically into the table where I could no longer see the coins. So it was impossible for me to play that game. That being said, when I left that area and came back, it worked like it's supposed to work, and it didn't happen at any of the other gambling dens, which there are several all throughout the rest of the game. So thankfully, it was like more of a glitch and less of like a bug that was going to stand around, because certain charms you can only get from playing these games in the gambling den. So because it fixed itself when I came back, it didn't limit me to not being able to get the charm for that location. The other one happened during a side mission. And the way this mission worked was I was supposed to meet a character at a location, and then me and the NPC were going to stand there in place while the NPC walked over to his horse and got on his horse. After he got on his horse, I would then be free to move and get on my horse and follow him. But because it was scripted in that way, while he's walking up to his horse, your character is stuck there waiting. Well, for whatever reason, this dipshit just got stuck, couldn't figure out how to get on his horse. It kind of walking back and forth, wouldn't get on the fucking horse. And because it was scripted in a way where my character is supposed to stand there, that means I couldn't walk, I couldn't open the menu to fast travel, I couldn't do anything. I was basically stuck in that spot. Not that big of a deal though, just closed the game, reopened it, it put me right back in that mission and right back in that spot in that mission, but this time, dipshit was able to get on his horse and I was able to complete that mission, and all it did was take 8 seconds out of my life to have to reboot the game. Not a big deal, but it did happen, and this is a no bullshit review, so I'm not going to withhold that from you. Another criticism is the character models. Some are great, some not so much. They are very, very hit and miss. Like, for example, here's the character model of Atsu, specifically in a cutscene. This shit almost looks like a real fucking person. This is a incredible character model. The in-game character model, not as good. I think it's also because of the lighting, but still, even this in-game character model still looks pretty fucking good. But then we go to young Atsu from the flashback sequences of the game, and what the fuck is this? Is this a person, or is this a fucking wax dummy? Because that doesn't look like skin, ladies and gentlemen. That shit looks like fucking wax. It looks like someone took fucking baby oil and smeared it all over this bitch's face. I don't know why there's such a big discrepancy between the adult Atsu character model and the young Atsu character model, but for whatever reason, they decided to make the young one look like she was made out of freaking clay. I don't know. And then there are the NPCs. Here's an NPC from in the game. And still, while not overly terrible, just something about it, I don't know. I think something in the eyes, they look dead. Like the NPCs, especially at a distance, they look like PS4 character models. They are not the greatest. Some of them even look worse than this. This is just one of the ones I grabbed real quick, but there are some other ones that look way rougher than this. And then also with the facial hair on some of these NPCs, like look at this guy's beard. I'm sorry, you can say I'm being harsh, but I think this looks like shit. I really do. It's 2025. We can't do better than this, and I know we can because I've seen characters in other games with better facial hair than this. Just look at some of the NPCs in Horizon Forbidden West, right? And listen, I'm not expecting every NPC in the entire world to have facial hair that looks amazing. But the ones that you actually interact with, like the ones that are going to be close up on screen, that are going to be speaking to you, I think they could have at least made those have better facial hair. Like the regular enemies that you just fight, or the regular NPCs that are just in the world doing bullshit, they want to look like this, fine, who cares? You're going to see them from 30 feet away. But when they're NPCs that you're actually engaging with in dialogue and cutscenes, and they're actually up close up on screen, I think they could have done better than this. So it is what it is. Like I said, character models, very hit and miss. Another thing, the animations for the mouths. That also is very, very hit and miss. Sometimes it looks like they're saying the things they're supposed to be saying. Sometimes it looks like I'm watching a Japanese film dubbed in English. It is very, very sporadic in how good it is. And again, some may say that I'm being harsh, but I don't feel that I am, because it's 2025. I'm judging this game, which I consider a AAA high-quality game from a top-tier studio, against other AAA games from top-tier studios. Not only that, I'm comparing it to other games within PlayStation Studios, to its other brother and sister studios, right? And when you compare the facial animations in this game to the facial animations in something like Horizon Forbidden West, Guerrilla just fucking beats the shit out of Sucker Punch when it comes to their facial animations. And not only that, the animations in general when it comes to a lot of these NPCs, A lot of the times it feels like old school games where the NPC's talking, so the mouth moves, and that's really it, right? There isn't a whole lot of the nuanced movements of a real human being. Something Horizon Forbidden West did so well is it didn't matter which NPC you were talking to. There were all the nuanced things of where the eyes are going and blinks and wrinkles in the skin and things they're doing with their hands and how they're moving their body. All these small things that in totality lend to that feeling like a real person. In this game, it feels like I'm playing Skyrim. It feels like I'm playing an Elder Scrolls game, right? It's just the person's mouth is moving and that's it. And yes, I'm being hyperbolic. It's not just the mouth, but it's also not all the small nuanced things that you got in Horizon Forbidden West. And it's because you can tell that they're not mocapping all these NPCs. In Horizon Forbidden West, it looks like they mocapped or performance capped every NPC. And I get that it costs a lot of money to do that. And I think the reporting is that the budget on this game was only $60 million. Maybe that was a decision to make to keep the budget down. If that's the case, I can understand that. But at the same time, I think I can still criticize and say that other games did it much, much better. And my expectations as we get into these games in these newer generations is that we get more things like that, because graphical fidelity can only get so far, right? We're already at damn near photorealism when it comes to a lot of things in games. So where's the next place to go? Well, the next place to go is things in realistic lighting, or realistic enemy AI, or realistic performances from these people, from these characters. These are the next places I expect games to go, and I know they can go there because I've seen it. So while I understand that this may have been a decision or a choice made to keep the budget for the game down, I still think it's a valid criticism to make of this game, because it is a big budget AAA game in 2025 from a top tier studio. And when I compare it to the other ones, I had expectations. And when it came to the NPCs and a lot of the animations, this game did not meet my expectations. Now, outside of that, when it comes to combat and all that other stuff, those look fucking amazing. Those look great. But here specifically, when it came to NPC interactions, I just feel it was a bit lacking. Also, some decisions made when it came to the wildlife. Like I spoke about earlier in the beginning of the video, this game has a lot of wildlife all over the place, and it makes the world feel alive. But at the same time, they've made some decisions on how that wildlife appears that, when you look at it, you're kind of like, kind of a missed opportunity. Great example is here with these fish that are jumping out of the water. The animation is only above the water. Those fish don't actually exist in that body of water. They literally only animate jumping out of the water, and then as soon as they cross the plane of going back into the water, they're gone. They don't exist. They're not actually inside that body of water. And does it negatively impact the game? Did it hurt my experience? Did it make me go, damn, this game is shit? No. At the same time, when you're looking at it, you're like, it's that small thing that breaks immersion. It's immersion breaking. And it's not just the fish, also the crabs on the beach. You look at a crab and it's walking on the beach, and then as it's walking on the sand, it just vanishes. They'll just like magically appear on the sand and then magically disappear. And they just kind of do that. That's the way they chose to do it. Why they decided to go that route, I'm not entirely sure, but it's just a strange thing. And again, it kind of takes away from the immersion when you're watching things appear and disappear in thin air for really no reason. And again, I've seen other games where the fish jump out of the water, but they're also in the water. So it's not like, oh, well, your expectations are too high. It's like, no, they're not. I've seen it done in other games. I know it can be done. They just chose not to do it here. I don't know the reason why they chose not to do it here, but to me, it's a missed opportunity. And it's something that I gotta dock a point for, right? If I'm keeping it real, if there's an actual no bullshit review, then I gotta bring this shit up, because I do expect better of big games in 2025, and I expect better of games going forward. Another small criticism is the way that the character interacts with water, because Atsu can both run in water, roll in water, swim in water, but when she comes out of the water, she is bone fucking dry. Again, small nitpick, but when you look at games like Uncharted 4, or hell, even the first Uncharted back on PS3, when Nathan Drake went in the water, he came out wet and then would slowly dry over time. And this game just bone dry the whole time. Again, small nitpick, but I'm comparing it to its brethren in PlayStation Studios and other games. When you go in the water, you come out looking wet. And this one, bone dry. Just another small criticism. That being said, of course, these are nitpicks. I am nitpicking shit. But honestly, when it came to this game, if I was going to find anything really negative to talk about, I was going to have to nitpick because it is almost overly positive. There's almost nothing negative to say about the game. Now, I've heard people say that they don't like the story, they think the story sucks. And while I don't feel that way, if someone else does, I'm going to say, okay, fine. Let's give them the story, right? Let's say, okay, story sucks. Let's hypothetically say story's trash. Take the story out of it. What about everything else? Well, everything else is great. Everything else is awesome. So at the end of the day, Ghost of Yotei for me is a fantastic game. I don't regret my purchase at all. I platinumed the game. I loved it. Did I love it as much as Tsushima? Not quite. I enjoyed the gameplay in this one more, but I enjoyed the characters and the story in Tsushima more. And because when it comes to narrative-driven games, that's really what I'm there for. It's really the narrative that I'm there for. The narrative in Tsushima, even though the other things aren't quite as good as Yotei, they're almost there, but not quite there, because the story excels over Yotei. For me, I think Tsushima is the better game, in very much the same way that I feel all the gameplay in Spider-Man 2 is better than in Spider-Man 1. I feel like all the gameplay in God of War Ragnarok is better than in God of War 2018. I feel that the gameplay in The Last of Us Part 2 is infinitely better than the gameplay in the first Last of Us. However, in all three of those situations, I feel that the first Spider-Man, the first God of War 2018 that being, and the first Last of Us are easily the better games there. Even though the gameplay and all the other things are cranked up and done a little bit better in the sequels, the stories just aren't as compelling or as great as they were in the first games. And that's kind of where I fall here. But to anyone that enjoyed Ghost of Tsushima, I highly, highly recommend Ghost of Yotei. To someone who hasn't played Ghost of Tsushima, because this isn't a sequel and you don't need to know the story of the first game, I also highly, highly recommend this game. I honestly don't know what kind of player plays Ghost of Yotei and then walks away saying, I didn't like that game. I don't. Now, if they say I didn't like that story or I didn't care for those characters, that I could see someone maybe saying, again, I don't feel that way, but if someone else does, I'm not going to argue with them on that. But the game overall, I really can't see a scenario where someone says, that game sucks. I really don't. It's just, it is a well-crafted, well-executed, beautiful graphical showcase and a well-polished game that from start to finish is enjoyable to play. And honestly, I don't know what more we can really ask for out of a game these days. These days, I'm honestly just hoping that games aren't buggy fucking messes. This game not only isn't that, it is a wonderful example of what we can do with the technology in gaming today. And again, I really enjoyed it. I would give it an easy 8 to maybe a 9 out of 10, probably falling closer to the 8 side. I would probably put Tsushima as a 9 because of the narrative and this as an 8. But yeah, easily 8 out of 10 game. One of my favorite games of the year. And I suspect this game will probably get nominated for Game of the Year. I don't think it'll win Game of the Year if it gets nominated, just because there are so many great games that came out this year. And honestly, I'm not sure that it's deserving of Game of the Year, right? I think it deserves to get nominated. I don't think that this is the one that should walk away with Game of the Year necessarily. If it did, I wouldn't be like, what the fuck were they thinking, right? Like, I can understand a case being made for it being Game of the Year. I just personally wouldn't put it as Game of the Year. I'm actually not sure what my Game of the Year so far this year is. I just don't quite think it's this one. But like I said, I do 100% think it's deserving of being nominated and suspect it will be. It may not, who knows? A lot of great games came out this year, but I suspect it probably will get at least nominated for the Game of the Year. If not nominated for Game of the Year, it's going to get nominated and probably win one of the other categories. But yeah, that's my no bullshit review of Ghost of Yotei, what I think is a wonderful follow-up to Ghost of Tsushima. Would I have preferred a Ghost of Tsushima 2? 100%, especially to see where that story went. But that's not the game that Sucker Punch decided to give us. They decided to give us this, and this, for what it is, I think is a great game. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Highly recommend it, and that's all I got for you guys on this one. And that's the video, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Have you played Ghost of Yotei? What were your thoughts? And as always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and consider becoming a channel member if you'd like to see more content like this. I plan on making much more content for this channel, as well as making some big changes in the upcoming year, and I'd really like for you guys to be part of that experience. Supernova, out.